Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you to our joint webinar with SailPoint titled The Power of Identity, Enabling Secure Business Growth. My name is George McConaughey, and I'll be your moderator for this afternoon. During this webinar, we urge you to send us your questions by utilizing the dialog box in the right-hand corner. Questions will be answered sequentially. We have a really great presentation for you today, but before we jump in, first up, I would like to go ahead and introduce Patrick Fields, Director of North American Sales for Sphere Technology Solutions. Patrick.
George, thank you for the introduction, and welcome to all attendees of today's webinar on how the power of identity enables secure business growth. My name is Patrick Fields. I'm the Director of North American Sales at Sphere Technology Solutions, and I would like to share with you a brief introduction to Sphere so that you will know who we are, what we do, and how we enable our clients to succeed by harnessing the power of identity. Joining me from Sphere is Rosario Mastrogiacomo. Rosario is the Director of Architecture and Design at Sphere Technology Solutions, and he is responsible for the strategy for Sphere's suite of solutions, including SphereBoard. Rosario is an experienced technology executive with over 20 years' experience gained from leading technology teams at several of the world's most prestigious financial services firms. And he will be one of the subject matter experts who will be answering your questions during today's webinar. Sphere Technology Solutions is a cybersecurity company. We focus on protecting your data with a heavy emphasis on your most sensitive data. We find it, we secure it, and we provide all the mechanisms to manage data security long term. We work with the largest and most complex firms in the world, which has allowed us to grow over 600% over the last 4 years. We solve our clients' complex cybersecurity challenges by providing the analytics that measure risk, executing on remediation programs to reduce risk, and deploying automation solutions to effectively manage risk. This serves to align the people, processes, and technology which enable the desired governance model to maintain security and compliance. We can begin to view this diagram by focusing on the three inner circles: data, systems, and access. These circles represent a typical information technology landscape when viewed from a high level. Data. This is the information all companies create and use each day in the operation of their business. Systems. This is where the data lives. Systems can be on-premise, they could be off-premise, or they could be in the cloud. The most common scenario is a blend of all three system types. Access. Data and systems must be accessed by employees in order for them to perform their jobs. This access must consider the varying needs of a wide range of workers, including the frontline employee, the middle manager, and all the way up to the C-suite. Additionally, there are access requirements for non-employees, such as business partners, customers, and vendors. Access to data must consider the needs of all of these constituents. From a purely operational perspective, the task of managing these core components is quite complicated. However, one must also consider the impact of security. What are the threats an organization must defend against? Are these threats internal? Are these threats external? Or are they both? And then there's compliance. What are the regulations that apply to your industry, and how are you going to abide by these regulations? And then lastly, there is governance. What is the target operating model for data, for systems, and for access? And how does the target operating model enforce security, prove compliance, and how do you maintain it? Sphere identifies security and compliance concerns, remediates these risks, and creates the governance model to prevent a return of these challenges by first collecting and analyzing metadata from the platforms, tools, and repositories in the target environment. This analysis enables Sphere to produce the key risk indicators which are necessary for establishing and maintaining the target operating model for your environment. Key risk indicators are created by applying business intelligence to the collected metadata. Sphere uses three distinct layers of business intelligence. There are industry best practices, there are Sphere's best practices, and then there are our customers' rules in business intelligence, which we apply to the collected metadata. The KRIs, once created, can be used in a multitude of ways. The KRIs can deliver an assessment, which provides visibility into the extent of issues as a one-time snapshot into the health of your organization. KRIs can also be used to create a risk prioritized plan to remediate the identified risks and enhance the policies and procedures used to manage the environment. During remediation activities, KRIs become very exciting as the metrics that measure security and compliance will improve during execution of the remediation plan. And when you're in the automation stage, the governance model is now in place so that an organization can manage by the KRIs, and risk mitigation is now a business as usual activity. I'd like to share with you some examples of how our clients have benefited from engaging with Sphere. To improve security for one of our customers, we identified over 2 million files containing sensitive data where access to the data did not follow the firm's accepted standard. This customer engaged Sphere in a remediation effort to lock down access to this data and establish a standardized permissions model based on the principle of least privilege. These measures will prevent this customer from becoming a victim of the next highly publicized data breach. To mitigate risk for another of our customers, Sphere conducted an enterprise-wide entitlement review for technology assets, certifying these assets with more than 5,000 owners. We then automated the process so that the customer will maintain an accurate book of record for technology ownership. This customer now understands the business context in which these technology assets must be managed. To improve regulatory compliance for another client, Sphere developed and deployed the controls necessary to enforce information barriers that are required by outside regulators. Sphere also established alerts to identify instances when attempts are made to pierce these barriers. This customer is no longer subject to audit failures, regulatory actions, and financial penalties. Now, you may have noticed that there are some common themes among these customer success stories. These themes are Sphere delivering visibility to uncover and measure risk, Sphere understanding the identities, ownership, and use cases for data, systems, and access, and Sphere then leveraging these metrics to make a positive impact for our clients. I'm sure many in our audience may have questions about Sphere technology solutions, or you may be facing challenges similar to those I mentioned on the previous slide. So please use the questions dialog box in your webinar console so our experts can provide you with the answers. Additionally, our contact information will appear later in the webinar, and we would welcome the opportunity to have a one-on-one discussion with you. I would now like to introduce SailPoint, a leading vendor on both the Gartner Magic Quadrant and the Forrester Wave reports. Joining us today from SailPoint are Stacy Miller and Steve Lewis. Stacy Miller has over 7 years of identity governance experience and over 20 years experience working with clients and partners. Stacy is currently part of SailPoint's Alliances and Channels team and is responsible for working with the SailPoint partner community. Steve Lewis has over 16 years of identity governance experience. He's been with SailPoint for 5 years, where he has held the position of Senior Sales Engineer and is currently serving as the Director of Partner Enablement. Prior to his tenure at SailPoint, Steve was a Senior Sales Engineer at Novell on their Identity and Security team. Stacy and Steve are responsible for ensuring that SailPoint's partners are able to communicate and demonstrate the benefits of SailPoint solutions to their customers. SailPoint team, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Patrick. If you're listening to this webinar, you're clearly in the security world. I'm sure, like me, you're growing tired of the constant list of ongoing data breaches, but we are also hooked and can't run away from them. I'm going to talk about the new threat landscape, but my goal today is to convince you to look at identity management not just as a security solution to mitigate breaches, but also as an incredible asset to your IT security strategy that gives you the ability to protect and, more importantly, enable your business. At SailPoint, we're passionate about identity, and we love to highlight the competitive advantage it delivers to our customers. Of course, it's impossible to talk about security strategy without understanding how the world has changed in the last few years. It used to be that network security was all that we needed. Employees would come into the office, access the network, do their jobs, and that was that. In most cases, intruders had to either come into a physical location or hack in from the outside network. As they became more creative, so did network security technologies. Firewalls became next-gen firewalls with intrusion prevention, anti-malware, and anti-bot sandboxing against zero-day malware. Those hackers turned slowly but surely to social engineering and to the weakest link in the security infrastructure, us. The most common attack vector is not SQL injections, APTs, or malware anymore, though they are still there as our DDoS attacks. The most common attack vector is us, people. As a result, exposure points have evolved and network security simply isn't enough. And with the disappearance of a true perimeter, humans become that perimeter and the gate between hackers and corporate data. With increased interconnectivity and advanced technology, we have created a world where it is no longer necessary for employees to be in the same physical space to collaborate. Business users now span employees, contractors, and partners who all access applications and data from a variety of devices, including personal ones, from locations all around the world. But despite all that, how we approach security hasn't changed. We continue to rely on similar methods without accepting that the network can't fully protect our applications and data. As a result, we're in a constant firefighting mode, always reacting. At the same time, threat landscape also has changed. It is no breaking news that no company is safe from attacks. Almost daily, we are bombarded with more news of data breaches. A breach that impacts merely 10,000 people is considered small time versus the mega breaches such as Yahoo's 1 billion record breach recently. There's no end to how frequent and how large data breaches can occur. And there's no signs of it slowing down. It's no wonder that we're all getting fatigued by the news, but it doesn't mean that we don't need to address it and get in front of it. Let's review quickly some stats around data breaches. One of the reasons that breaches are one of the reasons breaches are doing so much damage is that it takes on average 200 days to know one is happening in the first place. The threat environment has shifted to focus on the human factor, the weakest link as we know it. Why? Because an identity is the key to accessing sensitive data, and today it is quicker to fool a person than to penetrate a network, which is why the next fact is so high. 43% of breaches are caused by insiders, willingly or unwillingly. And it's not just the frequency of these attacks, it's their nature that's so worrisome. The targets are clear: credit card numbers, healthcare information, and proprietary, highly sensitive, if not classified data. These breaches can be very personal because it's often our data that's being breached. And it's not just the odd hacker anymore. Organized crime, terrorist units, highly sophisticated global hacking networks, and even world governments are in the game. We've become numb to these breaches, but the numbers are calling. Boards are now paying attention, and people are starting to acknowledge it's not a question of if you'll be breached, but when and how bad will it be. Our collective challenge of combating data breaches has been greatly complicated. First, by the fact that the way we work has changed, and it has changed dramatically. First, by the distributed workforce of employees, contractors, and partners, and by emerging technologies such as cloud apps. Much of what we do now is in the cloud. Why? Because it's accessible and it's easy. Just log in and start working from anywhere, from any device. At SailPoint, we have more than 50 cloud apps, and we are a small company. It's not rare to see mid-sized companies dealing with over 200 apps. but let me give an example of what can happen in such an IT environment. Do you recognize this map? This is the heat map of the accounts exposed by the 2015 Ashley Madison breach. I know, it was a consumer breach and an embarrassing one, if not a threat for marriages. But I use it as an example because it represents how what appeared to be an innocuous third-party breach can actually represent a real threat to an enterprise. The day after this breach, our president got a call from Darren Rolls, our CTO and CISO, with some good news. No names registered with the SailPoint domain were found in this breach, but there were some names exposed with the domain names of some of our customers. I guess they thought it was safer to use their corporate address rather than a home email address. We ourselves have an internal system that our customers access, for example, to check on the status of a trouble ticket, to get access to proprietary product information. So we did a cross-check of the emails registered on our systems with the exposed accounts at Ashley Madison, and sure enough, we came up with a match. Now, it's possible that if someone is foolish enough to register with their corporate ID with Ashley Madison, they would also be using the same password. So not only were we at risk of a breach, so was the individual's company. Now, fortunately, we both use a solid identity solution, so we were able to take appropriate action and disable that ID immediately. But it is an example of what I believe highlights accurately the new types of human errors leading to threats that we can and will encounter in the new environment. So in addition to the cloud and its easiness and accessibility, we have BOYD. Our users now span employees, contractors, and partners who all access our applications, our corporate applications and data from a variety of devices, including their personal ones from various locations. At the same time, shadow IT is exploding. The consumerization of IT has created a new reality in which end users purchase their own applications like file sharing devices without the knowledge of IT, which they perceive as too slow or too conservative to deal with when a new tool or app is needed. So it is certainly a fraction of the $141 billion spent on cloud services is not known or controlled by IT departments. And the final stat, I believe, is the most critical piece of data. It shows that the importance of unstructured data in the enterprise. 80% of data is unstructured. 80%. What it means is that even if IT is managing an application, it's very difficult to govern unstructured data. For example, every financial application that IT manages has an export button. Once that sensitive data is in a spreadsheet or in a PowerPoint, it can be emailed around without any control. We recently saw a very visible example of this with the recent WikiLeaks email breach. You probably heard all about the Podesta emails, but something you may have missed because it was less relevant to our election and the media did not cover it as much was Colin Powell's email breach. Powell's emails were hacked in an attempt to embarrass politicians, but the interesting side story for us in the business world was that in his emails was a list of Salesforce.com acquisition targets. And that list, on a couple of nice PowerPoint slides, was exposed and visible to everyone. How did this happen? Well, first, Colin Powell is a board member of SSDC, so he had access to sensitive information. Second, most companies who share sensitive data with their board do it over email in a form of unstructured data. And unstructured data is rarely protected. So with the emergence of mobile workforces, cloud technologies, and ubiquitous access to information, protecting all corporate data, structured and unstructured, has become a significant challenge. We live in a world where the enterprise perimeter has been stretched so far that it's virtually non-existent. So how do we address this new threat landscape? And more importantly, how do we balance the importance of security with the need for IT to enable the business to grow and compete? Because today, most of you probably would agree that many times your security initiatives compete with initiatives that foster business growth. In fact, 1 in 3 execs see security as a growth inhibitor. And 2 in 5 vital business opportunities were halted due to security concerns. So is security a necessary evil? We have to protect our sensitive data. The consequences of not doing so are immense, but at what cost? Losing a competitive advantage, losing years of innovation, losing expansion opportunities? This is not what business is all about. Business is about winning and creating value, and security needs to enhance that value, not diminish it. Executives, IT personnel, and business users alike are so focused on the risks that demand their attention that they have little time left to do what they are set out to do, grow their business. The balance of security and growth is uneven. We have become so fearful of cyber threats that we're being held back by security. So I have to ask, are you ready for your data breach? Considering how much the landscape has changed, everyone listening should be preparing for the next data breach. No matter how much IT security you have, no matter how locked down you think your perimeter is, the fact that your organization will experience a data breach is inevitable. It's our new reality. When we live in a world where we have more and more people accessing more and more applications that reside in more and more places, while unstructured data is out of control, we need to up our game. We need to take a new approach to security. And because understanding the who has access to what, or which identity has what access right, which is often the most critical element, identity governance provides the modern security infrastructure required to move business forward. In many places along the path of the data breach, there are events where hackers make their way through an organization's defenses. At many of these events, if a robust identity governance platform and corresponding policies were in place, a breach could be detected or even prevented, surely mitigated before the fateful 200 days. When analyzing data breaches, our CTO, Darren Rolls, likes to leverage Lockheed Martin's cyber kill chain phases, albeit in a slightly different order: reconnaissance, infiltration, exploitation, and exfiltration. Within this context, let's look at a typical data breach, how and where identity governance can help. Keep in mind, the average attack lasts between 200 and 300 days, as discussed before, and look at the length of the first phase, reconnaissance, compared to the last phase, exfiltration. Exfiltration, where hackers need to trigger the exfiltration of the data and then disappear before alarms are noticed and heard. Hackers are very smart in understanding how to target us, employees and humans. And in today's web-driven world, it's pretty easy to do some reconnaissance and figure out information about anyone, from the brand new employee to the CEO and their networks, which suppliers they use, who they correspond with the most, who they trust, who they report to, a wealth of information that ultimately will help them manufacture their social engineering and their attack. And then they start the attack, either through spear phishing an employee, sometimes the CEO himself, using a malicious link in an email. They will install malware on a laptop and ultimately gain access to enterprise test servers, something every enterprise has, but aren't nearly as vigilant at monitoring. From there, Hackers gain authentication to these test servers through default usernames and passwords that are usually still in use on test servers and start cracking poor user passwords to access their target applications and systems. And ultimately, they can request and receive access to additional systems by identifying some orphan accounts from former employees that may still be active. The exfiltration is probably the easiest part. For weeks, sometimes months, the hackers can work their way through the IT ecosystem without anyone noticing. They can take passwords, personal information, blueprints, roadmaps, and emails, all through databases and unstructured systems. Even if the breach is detected and stopped, at this point, the bad guys have everything they need and then some. So let's discuss how the power of identity can mitigate the data breach. Here are things identity management can easily manage up front. Default accounts and passwords need to be aggregated, certified, and remediated in production and test servers. In fact, on any server. Orphan account management can detect the creation of new admin accounts and kick off change controls. An automated recertification can easily highlight the escalation of privilege that usually takes place over several months and reveal that hackers created accounts to gain admin access. So overall visibility and inventory of accounts can really help as hackers start moving from system to system, looking for orphan accounts and trying to gain access to key applications. Authentication. Authentication is key. Multi-factor, step-up, and context and behavior-aware login can prevent and detect lots of issues. With better control over sign-in, identity management flags admin access at strange times and sees alerts when Salesforce logins start coming from odd places, such as China or Russia, for example. Password management can save the day. Strong password policies can make password cracking computationally tricky, if not impossible. Automated password lifecycles can enforce the change of passwords on owned accounts, and such an attack can stop a hacker in his or her tracks. And change detection and alerting notifies the security team that account passwords are changing outside of policy controls. So yes, password management, no matter how boring this may sound, can save the day. Lifecycle management always makes a big difference. Known joiner, mover, leader, state transactions help detect out-of-policy changes as they happen. How many companies out there keep accounts open long after employees have left the company? And with shadow IT, the issue is even worse than we think. Embedded data triggers will alert admins and security staff when entitlements are changing out of policy. Hackers attempt to gain access from orphan accounts or any account, well, that would be flagged right there with our identity platform. And detection controls and policy checks will catch any escalation of privilege that usually goes on right under our noses during a breach. Access request management is also critical. Approvals and audit for all new access changes could have stopped the Salesforce exploit I showed it in an example earlier. Preventative policy evaluation makes sure that only the right people have the right access to the right data. And access risk modeling directs IT security staff to focus on the areas of highest risk and best possible return on investigation. And then we have data access governance. Effective access modeling, data classification and categorization, and file access alerts can stop that final exfiltration of files dead in its tracks. Because when a test account starts pulling down hundreds of financial documents, alarm bells will go off. And finally, Integrated identity-aware security is what elevates your security strategy to that modern state where users are the new perimeter. IAM and security in one integrated strategy is and should be the starting goal. A shared IAM context across IT security operations environment can create a comprehensive web of controls. An integrated IAM can then connect key remediation actions to any network security tools already in place in the organization. All that is possible with an open identity platform like SailPoint. And here is a slide that summarizes what the power of identity can provide to IT staff to move from a reactive mode to a controlled, proactive operation. So yes, identity is power. Power to get out of the business of saying no and into the business of explaining how. You can now partner with the line of business and take back control of what is in the shadow of IT while letting your users decide on tools they need to be more productive and advance their business without adding additional risk to your security posture. It is the power to move forward and enter new markets. If you're confident in your security and compliance efforts, it's a lot easier to move to new regions, embrace new regulations, and onboard new employees. Identity is the power to stop being reactive and start innovating. By having a sound security strategy around the weakest link, that means us, to the path of data protection, it frees up some of your resources and much of your time to focus on business innovations rather than firefighting any potential data security gap you may have. And yes, let me reiterate one more time. We cover not only structured data through our identity governance platform, but also unstructured data. The sensitive data found in email and files sent around to all types of stakeholders, but nevertheless left unprotected. We call this solution data governance. And we predict these types of breaches will bloom in 2017. This is the power of identity. It gives you the ability to address and minimize the security threats that exist. The confidence to embrace BYOD and control shadow IT, and importantly, the ability to give your employees the freedom to work the way they want. That is the power of identity, and that's why SailPoint is so passionate about it. We've seen this power help so many of our customers and move forward without fear or even friction with other priorities. Thank you, and now I'll turn the session back over to George.
Stacey, thank you very much for this great presentation. It's interesting that you've touched upon quite a number of issues centering around identity access management and even alluded to some of the data governance issues that could go on in 2017. So thank you so much for that. It was a great presentation. We have a couple of questions coming in from the audience. So if you give me 2 seconds to sort through. Okay, so the first question I have coming in is currently I have multiple solutions internally. How would I use the solutions provided by SailPoint to deploy a more integrated solution? Stephen is one of our subject matter experts from SailPoint who's on the call. And Steve, I'd like to throw that to you first. And Rosario, if you wish to chime in as well, please feel free.
George, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Steve, we can hear you just fine.
Outstanding, just making sure I'm coming off mute. Yeah, we see a lot of our customers have multiple legacy solutions. So maybe one vendor's doing password management, another vendor's doing identity management. Maybe they do or don't have a vendor doing identity governance or data governance. So when you look at how do you bring all of those different security domains under a single umbrella, that's where you can take a look at SailPoint from a solution provider and Sphere as a services provider, so that you can, from essentially a single source, be able to get all of those different features and functions, but have them actually work together because they come out of the box in a way that works together, as opposed to trying to go maybe best of breed with different vendors providing different solutions. So by deploying essentially a pre-integrated set of solutions out of the box and then adapt them to your individual use cases and needs, you'll derive a lot more value. So that's one of the things that we as a partnership bring to the table.
Rosario?
Yeah, and I think, the way that we do our services, we like to always say we are product agnostic, but at the same time, we do recommend the best of breed. So if we go into a customer that doesn't have anything, we can recommend, some of the best of breed products, SailPoint being one of them. But when it comes to their existing products, the key is to make sure that we're leveraging, when you implement a new solution, that you're leveraging everything that they have. So over the years, they've built a lot of business intelligence. They've built a lot of processes, policies, procedures around their existing tools. You definitely don't want to go in and just say, well, throw all that out and, start from scratch. So, and that's where we come in, and we can kind of leverage all those other utilities, all those other tools, and make sure that they all play nicely together.
Great. And to dovetail from that, there's another question that's coming in, and Rosario, I'm going to throw this over to you. Do I have to deploy all of the solutions at once, or can I phase them in over time? What do you think?
No, we usually recommend that customers don't try to take on too much all at once. That's where projects end up failing. You have a large scope, and you're trying to tackle too many issues all at once, or too many connectors all at once, and you end up having something where you don't see immediate return on your investment. We always recommend, start small, start with the things and then slowly scale up and work on essentially versions of projects, as opposed to try to tackle one big giant project all at once.
Great. So there's another. I'm sorry, Stephen. Did you have a thought? No. Okay.
No, that covered it quite well.
Great. Okay, so another question coming in through the chat box. Does SailPoint have to deploy the solutions, or can you rely on a partner to deploy? Stephen, that's a good question to ask. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's one of the things that really drew me to SailPoint originally, is this very partner-first, partner-friendly culture within the company. So we as a vendor are actually going to prefer and push our customers to our partner community, Sphere being part of that community. So we want our partners to be able to resell our software, to be able to implement our software. We want to maintain our position as a software vendor, not as a services and software vendor. So we will, just to maintain a little bit of expertise, we do some services, a very small amount, just to keep our expertise fresh and new, but we will recommend and guide our customers to our partners for the deployment of our solutions. So it's a very clear message from SailPoint, is partner first, and we will always want our partners to deploy our solutions.
So Rosario, that's an interesting perspective with regards to best-of-breed solutions. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, one of the reasons that we love SailPoint, besides the technology, which is phenomenal, is this idea of them relying on partners to do more than just be a VAR. So At Sphere, we like to shy away from the VAR label because we like to do more than just sell a customer a product. We actually want to show them how they can gain the most value out of that product by doing services, by taking products that they've had on the shelf for years, and we show them how they can use that data and kind of integrate it with a tool like SailPoint to gain more value. So we love the fact that SailPoint has this attitude towards their partners, because we do have some partners that kind of shy away from that. They really just want you to just sell their product, and then if they have professional services, they really want to push their professional services. But SailPoint is great because they love working with us.
Great. Thank you for that. Just as a reminder, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to send them out. We have a couple more that are coming in. And this one's an interesting one, and I'll throw it out to both you, Steve, and you, Rosario. My firm has attempted several IAM initiatives in the past, and each has failed. And this is a very interesting one, to say the least. How do I avoid another program failure? Steve, your thoughts?
Okay, I'll chime in first. This is actually a very common situation. That's why we've, from a product perspective, differentiated our approach to solving identity governance issues. Our founders had their hands in Tivoli and Waveset and learned some very specific things about these failures in deploying various technologies. So as a company, we've taken a design approach to our products to make them easier to implement. So if you look at the Gartner Magic Quadrants as a measurement tool, there's the vertical axis and then there's the horizontal. The vertical is about the ability to execute, and then the horizontal is about the completeness of vision. So the ability to execute has a bunch of different factors to it. One of them being, market penetration, another one being product capability. So we designed our products to be easier to implement, and then we focus on our partners to provide the domain expertise and then the skill set to actually deploy the solutions. Therefore, we have a very high degree of success in getting our software implemented. And then if you take a look at our support, our customer satisfaction, as well as our maintenance retention rates, what that indicates, and those are all in the high 90s, is that our software is being implemented, is being used, and actually works. So what we have found is that when you compare our software and our partners' services and implement our solutions, it's a much lower total cost over, a 5 to 7 year amortization, but the degree of success is amazingly high. And that's why we're able to take those customers with that mindset, hook them up with other customers who have already gone through that kind of a thought process and then an implementation of our software. And we're able to prove to these people with doubt, if you will, that we're actually able to succeed as partnerships. And it's a very powerful message.
So, Rosario, the differentiated approach, the design and whatnot, that all speaks to Sphere as well. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, so I mean, whenever you do these large programs, at first especially if it's centered around a particular product, you obviously, as Steve was saying, you have to start with a product that is solid, that works, that is reliable and easy to implement. Of course, you need all those things, but then it also depends on who is actually doing that implementation. So one of the differentiators for Sphere from a services perspective is that this is all we do. All we do is data governance, unstructured data analysis, identity management. We are not a body shop where, we will send an engineer who last week was moving servers in the data center. This week, they're your security expert trying to implement SailPoint in your organization. We are a niche organization. This is all we focus on, and this is all we want to focus on. So when you get someone from Sphere to do the services, it's someone that is, you know, specifically working in that field and doing those types of projects. The other thing that we do is, in terms of where projects fail, is where you bring in a services organization and they basically, that consultant becomes a full-time employee. They're there forever. They'll come in, and as long as the product hasn't been deployed, as long as there's still stuff to be working on, they'll be there, you know, billing you, you know, and they'll be happy to do that, and their company will be happy to do that. One of the differentiators for us is that all our services are fixed cost, fixed duration. So we commit to having this deployed and running, and we're done in a specific time frame for a specific amount.
Great. Wonderful information we're learning here. So there's one final question coming in to the dialog box. How do I begin implementing SailPoint? My company has over 10,000 applications and has over 80,000 employees across multiple business units. Stephen, I guess we'll close out with you.
As an implementation expert, I might even defer back to you guys to see if you have thoughts about the best way to approach implementation.
Dario?
Yeah, so again, as I said before to the other question, you definitely want to set the right scope, set the right targets, the right milestones. You want to start small, do a proof of concept. You know, it's kind of like when you're troubleshooting an issue on a PC, right? If you change 5 things at once to try to resolve that one issue and the issue goes away, well, how do you know which one worked, which one didn't work? So you kind of want to start, you know, methodically working and adding more to the product, and making sure that you're designing your deployment, your implementation the right way. That you're not taking on too much, but at the same time, you're not doing too little where you're not showing value in the product or services you just bought.
Great. It looks like we are through the remainder of questions. So with that said, I would like to thank Stacy Miller, Stephen Lewis, Rosario Mastrogiacomo, and Patrick Fields for participating today in our webinar. A recording of this webinar will be available on our website within the next 24 to 48 hours at www.sphereco.com. And for more information on SailPoint, please visit their website at www.sailpoint.com. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope all of you have a great afternoon. Bye for now.